Well, at this time, we will now turn our attention to the DC Housing Authority. The Housing Authority is an independent district agency funded by both local and federal dollars and tasked with managing the district's public housing portfolio of over 8,000 units at 40 properties. More than 20,000 people live in DC public housing units. The care, upkeep, and quality of the living conditions of the residents is a major concern of this committee. In fact, today we want to understand more about the progress of repairs underway on the properties, given that the budget allocations were made to the authority in FY16. The Housing Authority also administers the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program, as well as the DC Local Rent Supplement Program, or LRSP. LRSP mirrors the federal voucher program by providing rental supplements and subsidies for families at up to 80% of the area median income using, of course, local dollars. The voucher program is a major way in which DC provides low-income households with a place to live. Residents include families with small children, persons with disabilities, seniors, and the homeless. Through the local rent supplement program, the Housing Authority has provided more than 2,000 qualified residents with affordable housing. The committee is concerned that voucher holders frequently encounter housing providers that hesitate to accept the vouchers, and that the voucher holders are experiencing extensive delays in finding suitable accepting housing. Also, in the form of local dollars, the Housing Authority receives funding to maintain a public safety force that patrols the public properties. The committee wants assurance that these officers are adequate to protect the housing properties and its residents at all times. Finally, today we will examine the Housing Authority's partnership with the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development on the New Communities Initiative. This initiative will redevelop 4 public housing sites that are in particular need of rejuvenation and foster mixed income communities in their place. The sites are Park Morton, located in Ward 1, Berry Farm, located in Ward 8, Lincoln Heights, located in Ward 7, and Northwest 1, located in Ward 6. And each has their own set of challenges. Today, I hope to discover the status of these projects with focus on the financial requirements and proposed structural plans for each site. Moreover, I hope to illuminate the obligation of the Housing Authority to residents who are relocated and then return to new communities developments, as well as clarify the specific guarantees under the right to return.
Hello, Madam Chair. Hello, everybody. My name is Paulette Matthews. I'm a native Washingtonian. I presently live in Berry Farms. And the reason why I'm actually here today is to kind of piggyback on what he was saying in reference to the pest control issue. We've gone and we've testified and we've told them about the rodent issue. And to my surprise, even after several people had testified, the pest company in which they kept them, gave them more money, and extended their contract, which I thought was kind of crazy because you sat there and you heard all the horror stories and you know how many times you send them out. And I feel as though the pest control people, because I'm there when they do come, don't do anything really to prevent what the tactic that they use is not working. So I'm trying to figure out why would they have allowed them to stay on the property knowing that they had a problem like that and they were not resolving it. Then my other concern is the fact that we would like to stay in place as they rebuild, because if everybody knows that when you get off the property, you're gone for 10, 20 years. Some people die. Some people don't make it back. Different criteria, whereas though, even though DC Housing will have an underlining in it, there might be like Edgewood Management that pretty much takes over, but we kind of still get the same type of response to stuff. So I'm trying to figure out why we can't do it whereas though they rebuild in place. And when you ask that question, it's often said it's the electricity. All the power runs on the same line. That's not true. And if so, when you make these statements that say that it can't be done because of the electricity, it can't be done because of the water pipes, then there should be a blueprint that should be given. And then at that same time, things probably can be redone to make it work so that it can happen that way. I don't know, but that's just something to consider. And then the words that are being used when you say replace to me means that what's there then is the same thing that you put back, far as the square footage and everything. At the present time in Berry Farms, we have yards, but I'm quite sure the layout is to eliminate the yards, probably eliminate the bedroom sides, so that's not replace, that's rebuilding. And at the same time, in doing so, you're displacing. So I'm trying to figure out, because people are using words and they're saying them when they're saying them, do they understand it? There's some people who understands what the words really mean. And I like my neighborhood. Every neighborhood has a situation. Everything is going on all around the world. You can't avoid it. But the way that things are being done is not the right way. We've seen so many examples of it not working. And so, again, I'm asking that y'all please make certain that the words just don't come out and they can't show what's going on.
Thank you. Next. Higher.
Thank you. My name is Margaret Wire. I live in Ward 3. I'm one of the people that was here in February, and I appreciate everybody's tenacity in making these hearings happen, especially Mr. Montiel. All love to somebody who's making it all work, right? A million emails back and forth. So I'm not a resident of public housing, but I'm a taxpayer and a homeowner and a resident of DC. And I know I saw many of you at the gathering at Berry Farms on Friday. Mr. White was there, Ms. Silverman and Kelly were there, Mr. White was there. There were a bunch of people who went to listen to the residents of Berry Farms and hear why their homes matter so much, not only to them, but to the District of Columbia. I live in Ward 3, as I said, and I walk down the street in Ward 3, I say hello to people, and they look at me like I'm going to steal their wallet. But there on Friday, nobody thought I was going to steal their wallet. Everybody was making everybody feel welcome and at home, and like we were all part of a community that really cared about each other. And that's what I want. I want those communities to flourish. That's what makes DC a beautiful place to live. So for my neighbors at Berry Farms, I don't want them to be displaced. I want phased redevelopment in place. I want the true right to return, and I want true one-for-one replacement, which means if you're in a good-sized 3-bedroom apartment now, you're going to be placed in the same good-sized 3-bedroom apartment in the new development. These folks have been through a long period of hardship and neglect, and I want them to reap the rewards of redevelopment when those rewards arrive. However, I want what's good for all of my neighbors in public housing across the district. I've been attending DCHA council meetings now for about a year, and month in and month out, I hear people, different people, making the same pleas for help about the same persistent problems, and nothing seems to change month in and month out. So what I'm asking, I have a very specific request of this committee in particular and council in general. I am asking that this council establish the expectation that the Housing Authority will set and meet clear improvement targets to move from what now seems to be a culture of complacency to a culture of accountability. I know from personal experience that targets work. I served for years as an administrator in public schools where we used improvement targets to improve our work. We noticed, for example, in our district that too many of our fourth graders weren't reading on grade level, and that's the kiss of death. If a kid's not reading on grade level by fourth grade, they have a very high probability of not graduating from high school. So we said, with the cooperation of our board, what could we do? We set a target for kindergarten. We started at the beginning. Only 2/3 of our kids were leaving kindergarten on grade level. So we started there. We set a clear and public target. We trained people. We worked together. We improved every year until at the end of 3 years, 90% of our kids did read on grade level. And that was despite the fact that this wasn't a popular idea in the beginning. You know, a lot of teachers were resistant, a lot of community members were resistant, but we insisted, we persisted, and we made it. So in December, I suggested that the Housing Authority set the same kind of target. Like, let's get rid of vermin. Let's start there. That's very concrete. We could get data. We could set targets. We could do it. I've been back every month since then, repeating that request, elaborating on that request, being in general a pain in the you-know-what, I'm sure, but it takes pains in the you-know-what sometimes to make a difference. I want to say that no organization is ever going to improve without setting clear, measurable targets, without being public about it, and without holding people accountable. A target needs to be identified that really matters in people's lives. It needs to be clear in public, and the organization needs to be held accountable. We will always need public housing. Draft budgets from the White House are showing billions of dollars of cuts. We have to use the resources we have intelligently and in a focused manner. I really believe we can, and I think that my neighbors deserve nothing less in this wealthy city than to live without vermin. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony today. My name is Brooke Hill, and I'm an Equal Justice Works Fellow sponsored by Kroll and Mourning at the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. The Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights is concerned that the current approach to redevelopment at Berry Farm is depriving tenants currently living at the property of maintenance and repairs that they are entitled to, threatens to displace families with children, and will significantly reduce the number of family-sized subsidized units in the district. In recent years, low-cost units have been disappearing from the district's housing stock at a rate of roughly 2,000 per year. Berry Farm's tenants are faced with a housing market where there simply are no other options. It is imperative that the Housing Authority implement key changes to the Berry Farm redevelopment to ensure it alleviates rather than contributes to the growth of the DC housing crisis. The committee respectfully urges the council to insist that the DCHA meaningfully adhere to the new community initiative principles, which it committed to honor with respect to the Berry Farm redevelopment, and adequately and immediately address the continuing uninhabitable conditions in which many tenants continue to reside. With respect to the new communities principles, the Housing Authority has not sufficiently met its commitment to one-for-one replacement by seeking to eliminate 91 3-, 4-, and 6-bedroom units and 78 2-bedroom units in which families presently reside or could reside in the redevelopment. Although the Housing Authority has produced replacement units of 100 units at Sheridan Station and Matthews Memorial, neither property offers affordable units with at least 4 bedrooms. Second, although DCHA previously passed Resolution 1606, intended to give effect to Berry Farm residents' right to return, the resolution's subject to availability provision could dilute the right significantly. Similarly, the promise to permit households to return to their original development and reside in a unit that fits their household size would be unenforceable for Berry Farm's residents who reside in units that are targeted for elimination. Further revisions and implementing regulations are thus required. Third, although DEMPED and the Housing Authority committed to build first, The Housing Authority will need to complete the necessary structural surveys and/or publicly confirm that as a result of having done these, residents will be able to stay in place. And with respect to maintenance, as of last week, the committee identified tenants whose conditions the Housing Authority has not yet addressed, either completely or in part. These are repairs that are essential for safe and habitable conditions for Berry Farms residents and their families. The Housing Authority's recent efforts to address some tenants' conditions are a step in the right direction, but such assistance comes long after tenants' repeated maintenance requests went ignored. And additionally, the committee is aware that many of these repairs are shoddy or patchwork fixes. Finally, the committee has received multiple reports from Berry Farm tenants indicating that many residents are confused regarding the lack of information or confusing and contradicting information the Housing Authority has provided regarding the development. We therefore urge the Council to call upon the Housing Authority to clearly set forth where it stands in the redevelopment process, whether any and all financing and/or necessary demolition approvals have been secured for the project, and when and how tenants will be relocated should such financing and approvals be secured, while also ensuring adherence to the new community's principles. So thus, we call on the Council to insist that the Housing Authority alter their redevelopment plan so that all existing units are replaced at the current bedroom sizes, and that the Housing Authority publicly commit to a build first plan, and finally, that the Housing Authority continue to fulfill its obligations with respect to maintenance. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Parisa Noruzi. I'm the Executive Director of Empower DC. And first, I'd like to say thank you to everybody on the panel who said everything so well. And I don't have prepared testimony, so I'm just going to speak off the top. But first, I would like to thank all of the members of the committee who either attended in person or sent staff out to Berry Farm on Friday. Really appreciate you making the time to do that. Everything that I know about public housing, I learned from the residents. And the more that you talk to the residents, the more you'll understand all of the detailed problems that exist. You know, something on the surface looks like it makes sense. When you talk to residents, you'll learn how unequally things are carried out. You know, I was thinking about the definition of insanity, right? When you do the same thing over and over again and you expect a different result. And that's what the city is doing from neighborhood to neighborhood, the same brand of so-called economic development, saying another stadium, another, condo development, et cetera. This is what we need for jobs. Or this is what we need to lift everybody. And the same thing for public housing redevelopment, as though we haven't already seen what this looks like and what the result is. And so my question is, what are we doing different this time? Nothing. There's nothing different. And we're being told, and the residents are being told, don't worry, we've got you. It's going to be okay, But we're doing nothing different. And, perhaps as Aja was saying in Kenilworth and some of the things that were put into the zoning, fought for and put into the zoning agreement, those hopefully will protect people better. But if that's the case, then why is Berry Farm being left out of the opportunity to have anything done differently to protect their rights? And that's what we see happening now. The Housing Authority is a strange animal, and I think right now the main thing that we need is way more oversight. Like, it can't be once a year that we have these hearings. I don't understand what the Housing Authority is doing. It's not serving its mission. If you're evicting people because of, having arrearages, when your mission is to house the people who would not be housed anywhere else in the city, then what are you really doing? And you heard testimony last time about people having arrearages on their ledger that were due to inaccuracies, So there really needs to be a full audit of that. If a tenant is being told you owe us rent because the Housing Authority never adjusted their rent payment when their income changed, and the tenant has done everything in their power to try to, make that adjustment happen, and then you're being told you're lease incompliant, you either can't return to your property or you're at risk of eviction because of this arrearage. You'll hear from residents like Paulette, I don't know if she had a chance to say it today, about the air conditioning fees in Berry Farm, where some residents are charged for having air conditioning units. Other residents are not. And on her ledger, it's charged as rent that wasn't paid, these air conditioning fees. And so there's so many elements where residents are just being treated unfairly. They're being treated differently among them. And then on the other hand, the Housing Authority has literally taken property in its inventory and flipped it on the private market for, very high cost. So here you have an agency that is charged with housing the unhoused. You have 1,000 families in DC General, and they have row houses in their inventory that instead of housing people in, they decided to flip, like literally on Euclid Street in Columbia Heights, they did one for over $900,000 it sold. I used to live right around the corner from that property. We built a limited equity affordable housing cooperative that is deeded affordable for 100 years. That property, something like that could have been done to it, or it could have been kept within the Housing Authority. Instead, it's just another $1 million house in Columbia Heights. And so we have to recognize the land that we have is our resource, okay? So why are we taking land that is not commodified and commodifying it? We're taking land that is public land that we have as our central asset to use for community development. Community development. The market is not going to provide the kind of housing we're talking about. We can't subsidize, we can't give developers enough money to build the kind of housing that we need for the number of people that we need it. We have land that we need to use and reserve for these uses, and unfortunately, the city has a long track record now of using our public land as tools of gentrification. They give public land and public resources to developers and others who are building things that are exclusive. And this is the same thing that's happening now. So I do want us to start thinking about what is the future of public housing. And we need it, first of all, as a city. We need it or something just like it. And maybe we need to come up with a program that is more, maybe it's outside of the Housing Authority's hands, maybe it's a community land trust, maybe it's some new type of innovation. We can use tools like DOPA, which has been talked about a lot, or even tenants through TOPA who want to assign their rights, over to it, or the acquisition of vacant housing like you've talked. There's plenty of streams. Plus, of course, lands like Berry Farm, where the city is already intending to increase the density threefold, but none of those new units would be truly affordable. So we have these resources and we're failing to use them. And so I just really want us to focus on the assets that we have, including the assets within these communities that need to be preserved, that need to be uplifted. We need to invest in Berry Farm. There's people there that are meaningful to the District of Columbia. We cannot just afford to continue to wipe away communities and history and act as though these individual people are not going to be harmed. They're absolutely being harmed. One last thing before I close is that, looking at other communities throughout the city, we also work in the Buzzard Point area, and Syfax, Greenleaf, and James Creek are in that area. Syfax is the closest neighbor to the new soccer stadium. This is largely has been an industrial area. There is not a lot of housing there. The city is expecting $1 billion worth of development and over 6,000 new residents into this area. Not a dime for real affordable housing. Not a dime to try to support the long-term sustainability of the affordable housing that exists there. So this is the prime time to look at an area like that and figure out a mechanism, whether it's tax increment financing or some kind of developer fee or whatever it is, that all of these people building condos by that stadium are providing funds in some manner, a revenue stream to support the renovation of the existing public housing and make sure that it is sustainable for the next 50, 100 years, et cetera. We have tools, we just need to use them. Thank you.
I haven't heard all of the testimony yet, and I know more is coming, but in the 2 years that I've been on this committee, I've heard quite a bit. And I'm also old school enough to know that there's something called receivership. Now, I'm being very to the point, okay, very to the point, and something's got to give, okay? Something's got to give.
That's in your
And
purview.
you and I know that given the federal approach to the budget this year, that we may not be as beneficial as we have been. And so it now is down to, the federal approach, that's our tax dollar too, because we all pay federal taxes. DC pays more federal taxes than 10 states in the United States of America. So, but we also pay this local, okay? A lot more goes, I presume, into the local because we only send $4 billion and what have you. And so how do we protect that? But more importantly, how do we protect the people that are living here? And so I'm just saying we may get to that point, and I'll leave it at that. Yes, ma'am.
Just on the ombudsman point, I haven't seen it be effective when it was established in other agencies, like in education. I mean, it was even established and then done away with, and then I think brought back. But it's so crazy to me how little attention is paid to public housing throughout the whole housing world. So Office of Tenant Advocate, they provide some good services. They don't have an expertise in public housing. I think it would be great if entities like that started to, adopt and incorporate public housing in their sphere of knowledge and, exercise. We just need it to be really clear that tenants' rights apply to public housing. It's like a totally crazy thing that we have to even say that, but and we had asked at one point for the Attorney General's office just to issue a statement saying, yes, public tenants' rights apply to public housing. The same code issues, the same, I would argue that TOPA should apply. I would argue that all of the suite of tenants' rights that exist in the District of Columbia should apply. But if not, then please give us a ruling, give us a interpretation then of how they apply and how they don't then. Let us know, because, we're told on one hand, yes, they apply, and then on the other hand, they're constantly violated. So